Good morning, everybody. This is my second meeting with your esteemed institute. The first meeting was in my embassy almost a year ago, where we spoke about Egyptian cinema and African cinema. And I guess this is part of the cultural diplomacy, where I think a nation represents itself abroad by tools and means that is not conventional. We are conventional diplomats, but our cinema, our culture, our art are the true invoice of cultural diplomacy. My understanding is that when we spoke about Africa, the cinema in our continent is a depiction also of our culture, and through which we introduce our culture to the outside world. Egyptian cinema is old, so this of North Africa. In Nigeria, we have also a very motivated cinema structure. We call it also one of the leading industries. I first thought maybe we share together my definition or the known definition of cultural diplomacy to have a common understanding of the way we as conventional diplomats sort of understand the importance of culture. If I take, as Mark was just debating with me before meeting here, and I'm sorry of getting into the subject, I don't know what is the time frame. Allow me at the outset to thank Mark Donfred, before I forgot, of giving me this opportunity once again to meet with you. The future of diplomacy lies definitely in the variety of way that diplomacy represents itself. And no better than culture diplomacy, where you can use all the soft power of a society to introduce and to achieve as well its goals abroad, in linking with other nations as well, and in introducing the depth and the soul of a particular nation. So cultural diplomacy to me, I guess, and to many, is the representation of the soul of the society, in which your character is divided between many variables and you bring it abroad. And with it, you achieve also what political and economic diplomacy is able to achieve, maybe more. If I may share few definitions that I have depicted for cultural diplomacy, Richard Arnett, a former State Department cultural diplomacy practitioner, said cultural relations grow naturally and originally without government intervention. The transactions of trade and tourism, student flows, communications, book circulation, migration, media access, intermarriage, millions of daily cross-culture encounters. If that is correct, cultural diplomacy can only be said to take place within formal diplomats serving national government, try to shape the channel, this natural flow to advance national interest. So it is not conventional in a sense. It is a way of depicting your culture and transcend it to the external world. In Egypt, as part of a very important and growing continent, Africa has established itself in many ways in our continent. One is through the migration that deep into history went from Egypt to parts of Africa and worldwide, and vice versa. Egypt was a cross passageway to many parts of the world. Its geographical location allows it to receive waves of migrants from the rest of North Africa, from sub-Saharan Africa, and vice versa. So the integration of Egypt into Africa culture is very well known. We have truly used this important location in helping the continent since the inception And through the struggle we had in the colonial era, I remember very well that Egypt, using the different African languages that was existed in our universities through teaching or through students who speaks almost all African languages, to introduce a wave of broadcasting to our continent, different parts, and through that we've been struggling against colonialism. And that was one part. Second, I think what we call it even religious diplomacy. Some know about Al-Azhar. Al-Azhar is the oldest Islamic university, and through its teaching, moderate Islam is prevailing in many parts of our continent, and through its link between religion and teaching and studies, scientific advances was made in these universities over the years. We have 15,000 students coming from our continent on a regular basis to our institute, and I'm sure that they are good messengers to the continent worldwide. So the role of Al-Azhar, or what we call it the religious diplomacy, is very important in a country like Afghanistan, where sometime you may understand certain beliefs and maybe some radicalism. The role of Al-Azhar was noted through its scholars, and this is what we call the soft power of an institution. When we speak about countries like Germany or Japan, I think the education process is very important. We have a Japanese university, and I remember very well that was even before the GUC, the German University in Cairo, was introduced. We said that culture sometime, when it achieves success and progress like this of Germany or this of Japan, has to introduce also its education process or center of excellence abroad. That's why I think the German University in Cairo or the Japanese University in Cairo are very important centers, not only for Egyptians, but for many in Africa and the Middle East. So education in itself, that's why maybe the Auswärtigsamt here covers the expenses of the German schools abroad, because the education process is also part of how we introduce ourselves. Maybe if I can even refer to the Mannschaft and the achievement sports can make to an image of a country. So public diplomacy or cultural diplomacy to me leads you to use all the soft tools that you have in your society, or to use the soul of your society and reach out to others. And I'm sure that education, exchange of students, and center of excellence, and you can definitely identify a country by those institutions. All of us remember definitely one day or another that they attended a program in Goethe Institute, or attended a lecture on one of the Stiftung, or maybe participated in a program like this in one of the world-known public diplomacy or cultural diplomacy institute. So my understanding that cultural diplomacy to a country like Egypt is a must. It's part of the third world ability and mobility also in reaching out to others. If I took the example of Egypt, here in Berlin, for example, many Egyptian artifacts and monuments are part of the way we interact with others. They are our permanent ambassadors, sort of, without naming a piece in particular. But when you look at the Egyptian old artifacts, I was in, or the Egyptology as science, you understand how Egypt also can reach through unconventional and cultural and soft power ways to others. It is the depiction of our culture, and it is also the common denominators that gathers us with you and with German. Say we are in Berlin and we have the newest museum where Egyptian heritage artifacts are presented. This is the common denominators between culture, where all love colors and beauty, and where through Egyptian history understand how our ancestors lived and how our culture flourished and how did our ancestors cultivate their land, traded and painted. And I am very proud to say that Africa as a source of knowledge and Africa as the cradle of civilization, Egypt was heart of that, where many waves of this love to our culture in the continent was presented in Europe. And I'm sure when I said the newest museum, I just came from Saarland last week. I attended the inauguration of the Turin collection, where thousands of Germans and Italians and many foreigners were presented to welcome one of the world's most prestigious collection, the Turin Egyptian collection. This common denominators influence your knowledge about our continent and about our culture. Having said that, and when I mention the waves of interrelations, migration, intermarriage, schooling, arts, one can remember many artifacts, many paintings, many movies that even represents a country. If we take the Battle of Algiers, for example, it's a movie, but it represents a story telling about the struggle of Algerian people toward independence. So in art, in culture, in paints, one can look at his culture as a common denominator of influencing the other. And we in Africa, although maybe we cannot influence the world economically or politically, but we definitely can affect them on a cultural basis. And here, cultural diplomacy is so important. I wish to refer also to the religious diplomacy in the sense that's not only through Al-Azhar and the Islamic institution that we reach out to Africa and to many parts of Asia and the world, but also the Coptic Egyptian Church has over its history a very strong ties with Ethiopia, where the two churches were interlinked together. And through that, I think we have common denominator also with other country. So if I mention that, I could say that the richness of Africa is very important tool to reach out to the world community and to achieve goals where we in the diplomatic circle might not be able to do. If I may also take you further to the world we are living in now, where information revolution or cyber revolution and social media are so active, cultural diplomacy becomes a tool of influencing the other. Even you can talk to your American colleagues over the net and you can affect definitely their views and ideas while elections. So you are in a way contributing in shaping policies abroad and outside your limited geographical space. I may also like to refer to one definition about the overall cultural diplomacy that has a potential to demonstrate national power, create an environment conducive to support and assist in the collection and interpretation of information. This, in turn, aids in the interpretation of intelligence, enhance a nation's prestige, and aids in granting support for for policies abroad. All of these factors affect a nation's security. Thus, cultural diplomacy has an effect on and a role to play in regard to national security. So cultural diplomacy, it's not only about culture, it's about achieving political and economic goal for a nation. So for us in Egypt, it is so important, while we have introduced maybe or endured two revolutions in the past 3 years to bring in the message that we wanted the world community to understand. Me as a diplomat can definitely say that our quest over the past 3 years since the 25th of January revolution and on the 30th of June revolution were a quest for democracy, freedom, and social justice. And I can, as a diplomat, defend the case of my nation, but definitely through cultural diplomacy, we can tell the people that this nation is very able to achieve its goals, and it is insisting in carrying out through cultural means its character, and to transcend to everybody why Egypt has made its revolution and its way forward. Back again to the main topic I wanted to tackle, which is the Egyptian historical ties with its continent. Maybe via the Nile, Egypt livelihood was made, and through that, I think many cultural exchange was made with West Africa, and through colonial time, Egyptian participation in the colonial eradication was very clear, and I think one can identify Egypt long time relations with Africa in the Al-Dir al-Bahari temple, where Hatshepsut, Queen Hatshepsut, have reached even to Somalia, which we call it then the Puntland. From that time, I think Egypt was very old ties with East Africa, and of course later on in different parts through the Islamic era or the Christian era or the Orthodox Church rule in Africa. After the revolution 1953, Egypt gained independence, and as I said, it built up relations with almost all the independence, our revolutionary movement in the continent, and helped them through. Out of 38 movements, many African countries have achieved its goals in independence. So I think the cultural effort that we have built with our continent was so important, and was a tool to achieve many goals, including bringing in the relations between North Africa and the sub-Saharan Africa closer over the years. And I'm sure that the universities that is open to African students in Egypt, in Alexandria, we have Senghor University for postgraduate studies, Cairo University, Al-Azhar in itself has about 7,000 African students out of 15,000 foreign students in this very important university. But in all Egyptian universities, as well as the different universities, including a French, a British, an American, and a Canadian universities, and the GUC, the German university in Cairo, there is a lot of African students. This interaction and this living together in an educational sphere allows cultural diplomacy and the influence of a nation to come and to become greater. I talked to Mark about also the possibility of talking a little bit about what is happening in the Middle East, and in a very short, this is also part of our cultural heritage and our diplomacy, which is in our view is a peace loving nation heading to stabilize the Middle East via political means. We are hosting today the pilgrim parties of the last confrontation between Israel and the Palestinians. Regrettably, many human suffering and many outrageous and losses of life. But Egypt is maintaining its very important role as a stabilizing factor in the region. We're hosting negotiation. Hopefully, we can find out a way through where parties will understand that only through peace that this region can flourish. Only through stability that we can all live in a successful, progressive region. And I think in Europe, we have also a stake on that. That's why I think an engagement and a true participation in the effort of developing our continent and developing our region will lead us to stabilize the Middle East, to have a secure southern European fringe. At the same time, trade and industry is so important. So when people talk about cultural diplomacy, should understand that it is about peace also. It's about security. It's about sustainable development. When we talk about tourism in Kenya or tourism in Egypt or parts of beautiful Africa, we mean that sustainable development is an integrated part of cultural diplomacy. Don't you think that tourism is a people-to-people contact? It's a cultural exchange, and it's an economic power. It is the industry that transcends its revenues back to the people, not to government. So I think cultural diplomacy in many ways carries the image of a nation or a continent or a culture, and at the same time it is a sustainable development tool, which I recommend you maybe in Africa, as I see many African students and colleagues around, to bring back this notion how to use cultural diplomacy as a tool of sustainable development. And here I may refrain from going on and ask you if there is any question that we can interact with, and any subject that you want to open. I have taken my time in the introduction, and I leave the floor for you, and I am open to any question that you may like to raise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for a wonderful keynote speech. We will now take a few questions.
Your Excellency, sir, my name is Dr. Isabamo from Nigeria. My question is, does Egypt have any strategic plan to lead Africa to regain its frontiers position in civilization as it did before?
Thank you. When I mentioned the role of culture diplomacy, and when I said that Africa is the cradle of civilization, this is a true fact that in our continent, we had the pharaonic civilization, the inception of history, but at the same time, and up till the colonial era, we had many centers of civilization that was destroyed by the colonial power. I remember I was an ambassador to India, and before the introduction of colonialism or the occupation in India, the recommendation that was made is to destroy the culture of that nation, to make it inferior to the Western culture so that you can prevail in a society. So in Africa, we used to have, and we always had, centers of civilization. You go to West Africa, you go to Southern Africa, you go to North Africa and Central and East. You will find many places where people are now gaining momentum, where culture are very active. Our music, our cinema, our interaction, our wealth even making is now happening. Africa is the continent of the future. This is not out of my hopes or dreams. This is reality. You can see everybody competing. While we are talking now, the US government have hosted US-Africa first important summit that is in itself a manifestation of how important Africa, not only to China or to the US or Russia or Korea or other nations, but it is important for its people. So if I am answering your question, it's not about Egypt taking the lead again. Africa has become an important of vibrant economies where we together, the five regional parts of the continent can interact, and the One Africa notion is introduced where we will, the five geographical division of the continent, unify our custom unions, we will unify our trade regulations, our standards, and Africa Union one day can call Africa one. So Egypt will definitely be part of this process and will help whenever we can, but I don't think we're talking here about one nation. We are talking about 53 countries heading a whole continent into one. This is my answer to you.
Fatma Al-Malik from Sudan. I'm the legal advisor of the National Bank of Egypt in Khartoum. Referring to the business as a tool of cultural diplomacy, I can say that the National Bank of Egypt in Khartoum now strengthen the relations between Egypt and Sudan. And now we, as employees, Sudanese and Egyptian, we work together to develop and to improve business relations between Sudan and Egypt. And after 2 years, I can say that the Egyptian in the bank, the employees from Egypt, now I can consider them as ambassadors of Sudan to Egypt.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very good example where we definitely can interact together between African countries and build up our blocks, being it the COMESA in East Africa, or SADC in Southern Africa, or the CDAO, or the in West Africa, and in Central Africa as well, and the Arab Maghreb in North Africa. So we can definitely interact, as the good example Mrs. Fatma has given us, of people can immigrate also from one country to another. We have 7,000 Egyptian engineers, doctors, and teachers around Africa through a tool which we have now established. It was before the Egyptian Technical Assistance to Africa. It's a fund that is now of an important value. We call it now an agency for development in Africa, where African nations also should depend on their own initiatives, like the one you mentioned, the National Bank of Egypt in Sudan, and I know a similar branch in other places, and in Addis Ababa, and I'm sure that through that interaction and ability of helping each other, Africa will move forward. Shall I take the last gentleman and then you?
Hi, my name is Alex. I'm half German, half Spanish. First of all, ahlan wa sahlan fi ICD. And I thought you're the most qualified person in the room to ask. So where do you see Egypt in about 10 years from the democratic point of view, as a lot has changed in recent years?
Thank you very much. I wanted to assure you that since the revolution of 2011, Egyptian has revolted for three main goals: democracy, freedom, and social justice. It's not about your economy going well, but it is about where this revenues goes to. So social justice is very important in making the poor feel that you have all these advances for them. And I'm sure that our revolution needs time to stabilize. It is definitely a transition. A transition is not an easy process. And I'm sure that everybody now in Egypt are certain that we can achieve democratic changes. Since 2011, we made clear that we are not behind a religious state. We do not want to establish our constitution on a religious-oriented basis. For that, we have amended the constitution, and this was very important, a very liberal and progressive civilian constitution. That was the first step. We completed, and we have elected a new president, and soon we will elect the new parliament, and by that you have the three most important changes in establishing democracy. So if I am to ask, it is a process. democracy, it is not a day occurrence, like you decide to be democratic, you are. You need a lot of changes, a lot of laws, a lot of people understanding to the change and its importance. You need very important decision economically, and we have taken a very important and bold decisions in the economic front as well, where many decisions are related to the social justice element of the revolution. So to answer you, I'm sure that 10 years will bring us closer to the dream of democracy. And as our people were in the streets in Tahrir Square and many other places, they will be definitely able to defend their goal. A transition, as I said, is difficult, and it will take time. But you have given me 10 years, and I promise you, in 10 years, you may tell us, while I'm an old retired diplomat, and you as a young, vibrant young man, tell us what happened in Egypt in 10 years. I'm optimistic, and I can see the fruits coming, I'm sure, very much soon.
Yeah.
Okay, this has to be our last question.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Ibrahim Farah Hassan, came from Norway. So maybe we can discuss water conflict between Egyptian and Ethiopian. And Ethiopian is a new dam could mean a crisis for Egypt. So Egyptian is a population of 84 million, draw as an estimated 95% of its water from the Nile. It is generally agreed without the Nile, the Egyptian is not get life. So depend as it is agriculture and general life are on the river. Egyptian is a claim to the Nile water comes first from in 1959. And Egyptian is declare, I think 1 year or 2 years, if Ethiopian start, Egyptian will attack Ethiopia. What
Is
say?
My reaction?
Yeah.
Okay. I spent 6 years of my life in Sydney, Australia, in Macquarie University, doing just water resources. I did my PhD in water resources, and in particular on the Nile basin. And I can assure you that the conclusion I reached after 6 years of studying the Nile water is that water is about management. It's about good management. It is not about curtailing or cutting water from one another. A river is like a human body. You cannot cut the leg or the head and the river will live. No, the river will live if we together have integrated our approach to development, and there is always enough water to everybody. So it is about how to manage Ethiopia's need to development, which is legitimate, and Egypt's need for water, because we are a desertic nation. Egypt is the gift of the Nile, as Herodot said. At the same time, respect the need of Sudan as a middle country in the eastern basin. So I think next month, we in Khartoum with Ethiopia will sit together and we will talk how to harness the river to the benefit of the 3 countries or the 4 countries in the eastern Nile. On Victoria Nile or in the main Nile, we have also a lot of developmental projects. The water that is wasted in the Nile because of the marshes and the lakes are too many, so we can harness like 18 billion cubic meter out of the Upper Nile projects. So there is no point at all in Egypt foreign policy that we conflict with any of our African brothers. As I told you, the ties between the Coptic Church and the Ethiopian Church goes back thousands in history. Islam was protected in early Islam in Ethiopia. Nagashi, the emperor of Al-Habasha of Ethiopia, protected the early Muslims who immigrated early in the message to Ethiopia. So there is no point truly to talk conflict about our continent. Let me take you even to Asia or to Europe, where the Rhine, for example, was a dump place to solid wastes from all over the countries. When you develop the Rhine in an integrated manner, even the salmon now can be catched in the river because of the cleanness of the water. That is because we have established this integrative link and integrated thinking about how to develop a river to the benefit of its people. So please clear it always in your mind. Africa is a continent for development, not conflict, with good diplomacy, with water diplomacy, with cultural diplomacy. We can develop bridges. So I am very confident. I remember I studied also the Mekong River in Southeast Asia. And it is countries that was plagued for 400 years, embarked on one river as a tool of development. Now the scheme of development in the Mekong River basin goes to maybe 20 to 25 billion US dollar scheme of cooperation. So through cooperation, we can, as I said, achieve, and through coordination and understanding the link between the installations, the engineering installation in Ethiopia, being it the Renaissance Dam or others, and the Sudanese dams on the river, and the Egyptian dam, where we can develop definitely a scheme where Ethiopia can develop itself, Sudan protect its installation and needs for development and water, and Egyptian to live in peace with the historical accreditation of water or the historical rights in an integrated manner along with its neighbors on the Eastern Nile. So an integrated scheme where we can help the three countries together is the only way forward, and this is what my government believes in.